Sorry I'm a little late. Okay, let's just get into it, shall we? Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the process. One second, I'm going to move my mic. Squeaky squeak. Okay. The process of cutting up or drawing a VTuber model, because it's really totally different than like when you're drawing a regular anything. I'm just gonna really quickly turn this thing on. I really screwed up the timing for all of this, to be honest. I wanted to be like totally ready, just like smoothly go into it. Completely failed that. I didn't set up the what? Okay, I guess I'll just have to do it manually. Okay, remind me if I'm accidentally switching things weirdly. They're not switching the screen. But we're gonna start out here in Photoshop because pretty much all you have to give the rigger a PSD file because that's sort of what Live 2D takes. So I'm gonna kind of quickly go through like the basics of cutting up a VTuber model, but just like speed through it. I'm assuming you sort of know the basics, because this is gonna be a sort of like common mistakes that I've seen at least, and then how to make it even better so that your rigger just really loves you. You don't have to get any notes from it or anything. So first things first. What you might notice about this one is that very few of the layers are named, and the ones that are sort of not super helpful. That's by far the biggest mistake that I get, is that layers just aren't named. They're just not named, which is obviously kind of very annoying because then I have to go through and name all of them, and that's just, you know, more work in my day. I can do it, but it's annoying. I don't even remember that. Oh, wow. Okay, sorry. Anyways, so this is the file. This is Akumako Ray. By the way, she's my daughter. She streams here on YouTube. Highly recommend you go watch her. And this is what the file was like when I first got it. It was kind of strange. Wait, is this even what the file was like when I first got it, or is this the changes that I made? I feel like this is the changes that I made. I guess this is the file when I first got it. Okay, anyways. So, yeah. First things first, layers. Actually, honestly, you know what the biggest problem is? You know the by far the biggest problem is? This file is way too low resolution. This file is way too low resolution. As far as I'm concerned, if the, like, VTuber's body isn't at least, like, let's say, like, 3,000 pixels across, I think 3,000 pixels is definitely a good starting point. I would up it even more. There's no problems with going too high resolution, okay? So this one was way too low resolution, and so I had to up the resolution, which was a lot of work because the algorithm for making things bigger is not so great. So I ended up having to redraw quite a bit of this this art. I had to just, like, you know, go in and refine it, make sure it wasn't clean, and or you know, add these little jaggies and stuff. I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to do that. That's a real problem. So really, please, for the love of God, start with a good resolution. It's almost impossible to fix. So that's number one. Number two, name your layers, please. For the love of God. Because I have to go in and be like, what is this? 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 Through every single thing. Which is fine. You have to do that too, but... Okay. Third most common mistake that I see. Putting the left and right things on the same layer, which is not true of this one, but is true of Q. Oh, by the way, this is your first time seeing Q, I think. She's gonna be my next daughter. She's being born. Currently. She's gestating. Which doesn't have named layers. And also, like, both sides were on the same layer. So I have to go through and I have to select it, layer via cut, rename. On the topic of layers and how they should be named, I'm sure other people have differing opinions, but my opinion is that, for instance, let's say let's do something that's really common. Okay, the eye highlights. Eye highlights, okay? Here's some eye highlights. So first of all, we would have to cut this and make sure, oop, I had the wrong one selected. Make sure we have one for each side, okay? If I lived in a perfect world, this is how everything that I would get would be named. So I name it what it is without spaces. You can use underscore. Adding the spaces means that when you send it to Live2D, the part name is set to a default part name, which used to not be a problem, but is starting to become more of a problem because certain plugins and stuff need the part name to be formatted. And quite frankly, 99% of Live2D riggers aren't going to change the part name because it doesn't matter most of the time. So what it is an eye highlight with no spaces, or an underscore. An underscore is nice. Yeah, let's do eye highlight underscore, and then which side it's on. And I'm sure you've heard this if you've watched any like VTuber cutting tutorials, but it's the VTuber's body side. So if this is this one here on the left side of the face of the VTuber, then this is going to be L, because that's her left side. This is going to be the right side of the VTuber. So this is I underscore highlight underscore R. Okay. And I put the side at the very end because when you're in Live2D and you're looking at a huge list of all of the parts, it is so annoying because it puts them in alphabetically. And usually you're looking for the area, which is the eye in this case, and then the highlight, which is the specific part of the eye, and then which side. And that can kind of be extrapolated to a lot of things. So for instance, let's say, so here's a version of Q that I already cut up. Yes, it looks strange. Yes, your cut up VTuber will look strange if you did some complex stuff. That's just how it works. So let's say I have this part of the OB, this part of the sash here. Or rather, let's look at the ruffle, please. Okay, there we go. So this part is the OB. It's part of the OB. Specifically, it's the ruffle. Specifically, it's the bottom ruffle. Sorry if this is not high res enough. Let me see if I can zoom it in a little bit. Does that work a little bit better? So this is the OB. It's the ruffle of the OB, and it's the bottom. I use, top and bottom, the full words, and then R and L for left and right. Because, no need to be too verbose about it, but T and B can be kind of confusing. So I write out top and bottom. Specifically, if we're going to go through comparing the uncut version to the cut version, I also cut each of the fingers out, which if you're going to have any sort of hand movement that's not just the wrist flicking back and forth, you're going to need each of the fingers as their own. So I've got the finger, index, middle, thumb, and I say finger. You could put hand, finger, index, but that's a little bit maybe too much. So I just say finger, index. And the reason I don't put R, even though this is the right hand, you should put R, but in my case, since it was the exact same on both the left and right sides, it's easier for me to just rig one of them and then duplicate it. And if I have the R in the file name, it's a lot harder for me to go and rename every single one. So I just didn't bother to do that. But for the actual palm, which I just called hand R, of course I put the R. Of course, this is true for the hair. We got hair back side R. It gets so weird. hair back center, L, hair back center, R, hair back center. Another note, another common mistake. I see this a lot. I see this. This is common. This is everyone does this. Everyone does this, and I don't appreciate it. It is 1,000 times easier for us to rig a mouth that is a straight line than for you to put the mouth in the shape that you think it should be. Because if it's in a shape already, whether that just be a regular like smile or whatever, and when I say mouth, I mean the lip. So if you've watched other tutorials, you'll know that you have the bottom lip and the top lip, which are the line and then a skin tone that can be used to like cover up the mouth, which is correct. That's absolutely how I would prefer it. Oh, I should have done the preface with this. This is, I'm not, you know, maybe another rigger doesn't prefer the things like this, but I'm saying I'm kind of taking my experience and extrapolating it to what I think I would prefer if someone was giving me an art file. So maybe the other riggers don't want the R and the L at the end of the file name. Maybe they want it at the front. I don't know, but that's what I prefer. So back to the mouth. You have the lips here, and the lip is already in this cat mouth shape, which makes it so hard for me to make it into anything else except a cat mouth shape. So like an O shape or a frown or anything. I much prefer to just get it as a straight line. It looks a little thick here just because they're like layered on top of each other, but in fact, it's actually not that thick of a line. It's actually a regular thickness line. And then you can give me a reference picture, like giving a reference picture to your rigger of like, oh, this is like what the face should look like. So for instance, in the case of Q here, I was given, oops, I opened that in the wrong application. I was given a few reference pictures, which were just like versions of this, but basically like, so here's the frown. Cute, very cute. I appreciate this. This is fantastic. Obviously, I can't use this exact picture in the rig. And if she had given me, if the artist had drawn a frown, I can't do anything with that because I just have to use the same lips for every expression, right? So I would much prefer to just get a straight line for the mouth. And then you can give me reference pictures for how the expressions look. Another note, usually, frequently, commonly, let me try to hide the bangs so we can talk about the face, because the face is probably one of the most complex parts of this whole thing, of course. Frequently, they, you know, I can tell that this artist did it, you know, learned up, like, okay, I know I need to put the side of the eyelash as its own part and the top of the eyelash, and then the bottom, it's not showing here, but the bottom eyelash as their own parts, which is great. Perfect, lovely, except this top eyelash, each of these individual lashes also need to be their own layers, because if I take this into Live 2D, I won't be able to, you see on my eye here? I won't be able to make these eyelashes 3D. So you see how they go from the top of the eyelash to the bottom of the eyelash? I can't do that if they're not separate. Which is sort of a running theme for this entire thing that is VTuber cutting. If you think that there's a part that might, not even should, just might move separately from the things around it, it needs to be its own layer. I think in this case, in my opinion, the line here should have also been its own layer separate from the color, because if I show you the rest of this eye, you can see that the color itself like extends really far down, and I don't know what to do with that as a rigger unless I have like a reference maybe. Like, is that the eyeshadow, or is that just supposed to be the shadow of the eyelid? It's kind of confusing as to what I'm supposed to do. So that's kind of the basics. That's just talking about the basics of VTuber cutting, okay? As far as going beyond that, taking the next steps, you know, getting ready for, I'm not gonna presume and say like, you know, a tier 4. Ooh, tier 4 VTuber rig. But this is how you're gonna get some like very good rigging. So let's go back to Ray. On Ray, each ponytail is just its own, it's all completely one layer, which doesn't help me a lot because obviously I would want to move each of these individual strands separately. And I have to say, most VTuber artists can visualize, oh, well, each individual strand of hair should move separately, and they'll do a very good job. But something you might not think about is that on Ray specifically, I wanted to have the hair highlights move. So I wanted the hair highlights as a separate layer. So I had to do that manually, by the way, which was really fun and definitely not soul draining. Another thing that VTuber artists tend to forget is that even though you might not think, well, obviously the back of this sleeve is never gonna show, you would be wrong, because I, as a VTuber cutter, am very meticulous, and and a rigger, I want her arm to be able to move all the way up. So in my, okay, yes, a really cut up VTuber is gonna look extremely scuffed at the end, and maybe like, you know, some VTuber, what's the word? Commissioners? Clients. The clients might not understand that, but it's what has to be done. It doesn't make a very good PNG, but here you can see I redrew the hand for the other side so that when her hand comes up, you know, all the way up towards her face, it's showing the right side of the hand, which is another thing you should keep in mind. And by the way, yes, also each of the, oh wait, this one I just drew as one, but for this one, each finger is its own layer. And then I separated out the shadow as well. The shadow, of course, is its own because as the sleeve moves, the shadow will move too. And, you know, I can just, it's very simple in Live 2D to just make it clip to the wrist. So even if it's not technically something like a clipping that's available or possible in Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint, don't worry about it. It's all clipping is available, you know, in Live 2D. On the note of shadows, the most common problem I get in VTuber model files is that the hair is separated properly. Like, let's say the bangs are all, you know, separate, perfect, lovely, couldn't ask for more. I love it. You know, each bang is its own separate thing. But the shadow isn't. So let's go back to Ray. I remember, did Ray's even have a shadow? Okay, yeah, I did. So in this case, by the way, her bangs were, I think, one piece. Question mark? Yeah, her bangs were all one piece. I don't know why the lines were a separate piece, but so the bangs are all one piece, and also it's not set to multiply, which we'll get to in a second. So I can, it means that I end up moving the bang pieces separately, but the shadow, I can't really move separately, which looks kind of strange, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of VTuber models where they just don't care. You know, it's not super extremely important, but it bothers me. It bothers me. And it's very simple in Live 2D to have the shadow follow the strand that's ahead of it, as long as each strand has its own shadow. On another note, which I mentioned before, this is not set to multiply, which means that as soon as it, like, either it's not gonna you know, cover the eye, or it's just gonna interact kind of strangely with the face because it won't be able to fall on the face properly and affect, you know, let's say the eyebrow or the the ear or something. So if you set it to multiply, it looks a little darker, but you can just lower the opacity a bit. It looks pretty much the same. It means that now you see it actually like falls upon the features of the face. It falls upon all the extra parts, the ear and stuff, instead of just kind of covering it up like it used to. Kind of strangely, see? Yeah. So, in my opinion, all shadows should be set to multiply. I think there's very few situations in which a shadow shouldn't be multiply. I can't think of any off the top of my head. If you want a bit more details, sorry, this is like very all over the place, but I'm just sort of saying things as they occur to me. I meant to write a script. I didn't. It's fine. On the topic of hair, in case you are a little bit confused about the hair, so in this case, let's just looking at just this. I would want this piece to be its own. I want this piece to be its own. This big part can be its own, but I want it to extend farther down into here so that the bottom half can move separately. So that's exactly what I did when I cut it up. Are there major blending modes that Live 2D doesn't support? It doesn't support most. You can't actually see it, but it doesn't support most of them. It only supports multiply, normal, and additive, I think. Let me double check that really quick. It supports, yeah, exactly what I just said. It supports normal, additive, and multiply. Additive is good for like shines and stuff. Yes, the face blood. So every single thing about the face should be its own layer. So in this case, yes, the blush is its own. The freckles are also its own. Where are the freckles here? The nose, okay, so this is gonna be kind of my preference. I have some very particular preferences when it comes to the nose. In my opinion, the nose, every single part should be its own. So this is what I got more or less when I received the file. Actually, if I remember correctly, was the Band-Aid part of it? And I just sort of decided this is how the nose should look. I can't fully remember. But I want the line and the actual like color and highlight here to all be different, because what I do, not on my own model, but what I do on other people's models is as the face turns, I change it from being this like dot for the nose into being a line. I can actually show you that. Let's move over to Live 2D. There it is. Okay, so as Ray turns to the left or right, her nose becomes a line, and that wouldn't be possible. So you can see there it makes a transition between the dot and the line. That wouldn't be possible if the like gradient color of the nose and the dot part of the nose weren't separate. So there you go. Another sort of, I don't know if this is technically advanced, really, but I would say this is a very good practice if you are a VTuber artist. And this is also something that I rarely see, but is very important. Okay, there it is. This is really important. I need, or I mean, this is really a preference, so it's not like it's an absolute need, but it's quite a preference of mine. The head line and the head color should be two separate layers. And the reason for that is when you actually model the head moving up, see how my chin disappears? I don't like my own rig so much, I need to fix it, but you see how my chin line disappears? That's how you're able to do that. So in the case of Ray, I'll show you. Yeah, the chin line disappears. Also, this shadow on the side of her face, I also made a separate layer. So for the head, just the head, not even talking about the face, there's quite a few layers, because there's the head color, which is just the skin tone. Just no texturing or any, no color, no gradients, no nothing. It's just the color of the head, the skin tone. Then there's the chin shadow, which allows me to sort of emphasize as her head's moving up and or to the side. Not so much to the side, but mostly to the up. The head line, which like I said, I'm able to disappear as the head moves up. And then finally the what's it called? The blush. I don't know where it is here. I think I put it under face. Yeah, face blush. So the blush here. And like the freckles and all that stuff or whatever too. But so yeah, every single color in the face basically is its own layer. Basically. Let's go back to Photoshop. Sorry, I have all the things named weirdly. Okay. If you want to talk about the eyes, and you want to get more, so having the whole iris, except for the eye highlights do need to be their own layer, but the rest of the iris, it can be one layer. That's okay. But if you want to do anything fancy with the eye rigging at all, you need like the pupil and maybe that part to like be separate. So you might have like a base thing. Ray's eye is quite simple as far as eyes go. You know, eyes can get insanely complicated, especially with VTubers. So this one's pretty simple. So there's just 3 parts to it, which is the pupil. I call this the bright, and then the iris itself, and then the eye highlight. And if you haven't watched basic tutorials, it should be the iris is one, the eye white is another. You could also make the shadow of the eye white its own layer. Honestly, doesn't really matter either way. You know, that's definitely like really doesn't matter either way. And then each of these eyelashes needs to be its own layer. As far as the bottom eyelashes, it's kind of preferable, I think, especially when they're so prominent like it is here. They probably do need to be their own layers. But I think in Q's case, where they're sort of not so prominent, it's okay. I can deal with these all being their own layer. She gets more terrifying the more things we turn off. Oh, I kind of mentioned this, but then didn't really finish my thought. A lot of artists think that because, you know, there's no chance that the back of the sleeve here will show. Well, it does when I rig it. So I have to add my own. Here, let's hide this shadow. I have to add my own sleeve backing, which isn't so hard. I just sort of copy it and darken it a little bit. Doesn't need to be complicated. Not going to be showing very much. Same with the skirt. The skirt definitely absolutely needed a back part version of the skirt. So you can see here, it's just a little bit darker version of the skirt itself. Because as the skirt moves a bit, you know, I might show the back or whatever. If you wanted to get really next level with it. So, okay. This is really next level. I almost never see artists doing this. But if you really want good looking skirts that have ruffles, or like any good looking ruffles that look just really good in 3D. Actually, I'll show you what mine look like, because I did this with mine. Or not this one, not this model. Should I show you my old model? I did it with my old model. Okay, please ignore the bad art you're about to see. But it illustrates a really good point. This one. Woo, hello. Okay. So you see this? You see my skirt and how it looks really 3D because the individual ruffles are kind of like moving as far as, you know, when I move up and down like that. That's because each part of this is its own layer. So I need a cursor. I don't have like something that can act as a cursor. I guess I'll just use this. This is my color palette. Okay, so this is gonna be my cursor. So you see the inside of the ruffle is its own layer. The outside of the ruffle is its own layer. And the like, or I'll call it the top. So the top of the ruffle is its own layer. The bottom of the ruffle is its own layer. And the inside of the ruffle is its own layer. So if you have prominent or sort of defined ruffles like this, it is absolutely a good idea to sort of fit. Gosh, I hate this. I hate this. We need to go back. We need to go back. That's so weird. Yes, I have a maid outfit on. Yeah. It's really a pain. I'm not gonna say it's not a pain. It's really a pain to draw it like that. But God, does it look so good when it's rigged. Oh, it looks so good when it's rigged. So it was really so much work for me to try to put in the time to do that. So instead I just sort of, oh, you can't see it. You can't see it. Instead, I just sort of kind of set up, so it might kind of work. It didn't work as good as if they were separate layers, but just the way that the skirt was drawn and the highlights and the shadows and stuff, there was no way I was going to be able to separate it properly. So I just didn't bother to do that. And, you know, you're not going to be, this is such a small element of the whole design. Let's go back to Photoshop. There we go. What else? Ah, the knees. These days, mostly I see it pretty good. Actually, you know, okay, so all of the tutorials are very specific about like, oh, foot, and then you cut it off around the ankle, you round it, and then you round it here with the knee, which is great. Honestly, that's great. And it's great. I don't necessarily need that because I mean, okay, it's a good idea. It's a good idea. So if you want to make it really easy on your rigger to move the legs, it should be cut off like around the bottom of the knee and then sort of just an okay place on the ankle. It's kind of weird, the ankle, especially in a case like this where it's just like a smooth transition. But the thing is, the rigger can kind of make it work with glue and skinning and stuff anyways, so it's not too much to worry about. But try to make sure that the pieces overlap so they have, you know, some buffer room. A pumpkin. I mean, that's a separate piece. It moves on her head. Someone asked, could the pumpkin on Mako's hair do anything like move? I think if you mean the ahoge, yeah, it moves. I have a feeling that most models aren't going to move enough to justify not having the whole leg together. I don't know. I think recently the trend has been to make the legs, because I mean, I saw one person describe it. One says the potty dance, which is only slightly insulting, but absolutely true. The trend with models, I have it as well. I have the potty dance. Ignore my hands. That's a hand tracking thing I'm working on. So you can see as I move up and down, my knees come together. That's what someone called the potty dance. I think that most models have at least that. It's very common that most VTuber models have the potty dance movement, because it's simple. You know, it's not too hard to rig or to achieve. The body dance, the steppies. Yeah, the steppies is the new trend. It's so hard to pull off, though, to be honest. I find very few models pull it off properly. Thank you for the head pat. I don't know who, I think someone accidentally gave me a head pat, but oh, Path. The Pat in Path gave me a head pat with just a path deformer. So personally, I kind of prefer this, but the way I do legs, the reason I didn't cut Ray's legs is because using skinning, you can just have it cut it up for you. So, and it's just a lot quicker, in my opinion, especially for legs like this. It's just a lot quicker than having the legs be separate pieces. Because if the legs are separate pieces, I have to do special adjustments to make the lines line up and stuff. But if the leg is like this, and then I just use the automatic skinning tool to add a rotation deformer at the hip, the knee, and the ankle, it's done. It's basically done. I just have to adjust the glue, and then that's it. Thank you for the intentional head pats now. So what else? Go back to Q. Is there something to talk about with Q? With Q's, vast portions of this were just one piece. And I had to go in and separate out, for instance, the ruffle. First of all, I wanted the top part of the top layer of the kimono to be its own, and obviously the bottom, so that when, you know, you have the physics and stuff, here, then they could like flow outwards like this, separated left and right. And in doing so, I also made the ruffles their own layer so that I can make the ruffles kind of bounce and shift around. How many riggings have I done? For other people, I've done 3. For myself, I've done like... Oh, no, wait, more than 3. 4? 4, technically, if you count Farah too. I don't know if you should. But 4 if you count Farah. And then for myself, like 8 or so. So, I don't know. How many is that? That's like 12 or 13-ish sort of area. But yeah, I've been doing a lot more rigs for other people recently, and that's when I started using other people's art files. And that's when I got very frustrated. And that's what I decided to try to make this tutorial. I don't know how concise or interesting it's going to be or helpful, but maybe it'd be helpful for me to just go through a specific part of this and show you how I cut it up. So, for instance, the muff was all one. Oh, and they did a great job here, by the way, having the muff back be the correct part, and then the muff forward, the muff top being... I just called it a muff. I don't know what you should call it. That's what I called it. Yeah. But they didn't cut out this. They didn't cut out the separate parts of the muff, and that's a little bit frustrating. Let's specifically talk about the obi, because it's quite complicated and it's all one piece. So let's go through how I separated that out. Hello Q. Hello Q cut. I should have said this at the beginning. I don't think it is economic use of your time to draw the whole model and then cut it up. I think you're gonna get a better result if you you layer it properly as you're drawing. I should have said that at the beginning. It's very important. It's the way I draw, and the only downside is it does kind of affect your flow and the way that you end up drawing, but you get used to it, you know, and you improve, and it saves you so much time, and it makes such a better model file. Vastly. So I just thought I would mention that. Totally late, but let's compare. Let's compare these. So obviously we started with this whole thing just being 1. And I looked at it and I said, well, first things first, I want this little fox guy to move separately because I want to be able to rotate him like this. I said, okay, well, that's done. Well, it has a little bit of a shadow to it. Okay, well, I need the shadow too, because the shadow needs to move with it too, right? So the shadow and the charm are their own. Technically, they could have been separate, but in the end, I made it so that this shadow, or sorry, the charm itself sort of deforms, so that it like looks left and right, which I think is a really cute touch. No one's gonna notice. I notice. So that's already 2. We've now gotten to 3 layers because everything else is one layer, and then the charm and the charm shadow is 1 layer. And I say, okay, well, maybe I want these beads to be their own layer. Okay, so we need I called it the tie. The tie needs to be its own layer. Well, the tie has a shadow too, and the shadow needs to move with the tie. So I need the shadow to also be a separate thing. And by the way, it's a shadow. So shadows should be multiplied. So I set it as a multiply layer. Just gonna keep noting that. And you'll notice also that I included this line here because I thought about it and I was like, well, I guess this line is like the tie scrunching up the obi. So I guess this shadow line should follow it. Then I have what I called the actual obi itself, the sash that goes around here. So that's its own. And I just kept the shadows there because it's fine. It doesn't need to be super, super, super complex. Although I do want to show you Abby's model really quickly because there is something quite complex that I did with it. Which is a very, very, very like top level technique to get some really good 3D looking stuff. Anyway, so I got the sash, and then I made each of the ruffles their own because I want the ruffles to shake and shimmy and bounce. It'd be very cute. And then the actual bottom part of the sash, and then the top part of the fold. So in the end, this ended up being from one layer now down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 layers. Oh ho ho, but that is not so. In fact, it is 11 layers because I thought about it and I was like, well, if she turns to the left and right enough, then this tie, this purple tie is going to deform too much and these aren't going to look right. So I'm going to add extra little spheres so that as it moves, these can pop out from the back and sort of wrap around and compensate for that as if the whole thing is twisting around. Am I using Photoshop? I'm using Photoshop right now, yeah. So that's kind of one of those next level techniques is you have to think about the things that won't show from head on, the things that will only show if the rigger is allowed to push the limits of the model, because the rigger can only add as much motion as we have been given by the artist. In another world, I would have also drawn kind of the same thing for these ruffles here. So that like as she turns, like more layers of ruffles appear from behind her, right? And speaking of turning so far that things appear from behind you, let me open up Abby's model very quickly if I can find it. I'm just gonna show one small thing from this because it's an extremely good learning experience. Finished projects. This one. Okay, just gonna show you this part. Okay, so this is her skirt, and when I got it, it looked just like this. It was one layer, and by the way, Shu did a fantastic job cutting everything up. You can see how Shu named the layers here. Each has its own what's it called? Unique. Every layer has its own unique name, which is, by the way, super important. And fantastic job cutting this up. You can tell the ones that I named because they have the R at the end. But anyways, I was looking at this and I was like, I really want the ability to move the skirt past what you see here. Okay. And so I went in and I separated the shadows from the base color. So when she actually moves, you can see here the shadows can shift and look like the whole skirt is turning. And then you're able to just sort of mask the shadows to the base color. So, it looks correct. So this is if you're able to do this and pull it off correctly, Your rigger will love you. So you see the idea here? I don't think I went up and down. Maybe a little bit. Yeah, maybe a little bit. But mostly I was just focused on the left and right turning here. Because, I mean, how much is going to be moving up and down? Not at all. You can see the whole front and back of it. Or top and bottom of it, I mean. So in this case, by the way, in the case that you want to do something like this, there's some layers to it, quite literally. The whole skirt itself is the skirt. The line, just like the black or colored line, needs to be its own layer. The base color needs to be its own layer. And then the part that's actually moving on top of the base layer needs to be its own layer. So as I was showing you, I was just moving the shadow part, but I don't want the shadow part to like overlap with the lines in like a strange way. So that's why the lines need to be their own layer, so that the lines can just go on top of the shadows. I'm doing so many hand motions that you can't see to try to explain this. So you can see it's all totally separate. Oh, this is the original file that I copied underneath. Or did I just copy it? Oh no, I just copied it on accident. So here, yeah, this is my own separate layer that I created to mimic the shadow. And really the color of this base part doesn't matter because it's just used as a mask for this. So in fact, if I just turn off the clipping mask. So there, I've turned off the bottom layer. So here, it doesn't matter what color this is. In fact, I actually prefer to make my masks a bright green so that it doesn't matter what color they are anyways, because you won't be able to see them. They're just a mask. They're just used to define the shape of another object. So there you go. If I turn the clipping mask back on, there you go. Oh, and this is an even third layer where this is just the shadows that are on this side that I wanted to keep regardless of the turning of the skirt. So it's such a subtle detail. That's kind of you're going crazy. Okay. I think that's everything. Let me just check my notes. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. If you have any questions, please ask away in chat and I will answer them to the best of my ability. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. As you can see here, by the way, another skirt shadow, which is set to multiply. And then if I actually set the clipping mask, it would look correct. But honestly, what the clipping masks are in Photoshop don't matter because they don't transfer over to Livestream. If you've ever wondered about that. Yeah. I don't really have anything else to talk about. The buckle I also made its own. The belt is also its own. Skirt front and back. I could have made the zipper its own. You can see here I have the back of the jacket that I created. It didn't really end up showing in the end, but the rigs look beautiful in action. Thank you. Oh, I should note this as well. If you want them to have any sort of arm motion beyond just down, you need an extra forearm, upper arm and forearm, piece, which here looks like this. So for me, there wasn't one in the art, so I just made one by cutting up the arm that was already there. So here's the upper arm, and I just added an elbow to it, but this elbow is not going to show, so I didn't care so much about it. It's just kind of a nub. And then here's the elbow that's actually going to show. And then there's also the back part, like, how do I explain this? The upper arm also has a back part of the sleeve as well, which you can't see here. What's my least favorite part of rigging? Glue. I hate glue. I'm not good at it. I can't get it to work the way people say it's supposed to work. I use it, but it frustrates me to no end. Yeah, glue mostly. I'm as far as rigging goes, I'm still I would say I'm still definitely learning. In general, though, I would say I'm a very, very good VTuber cutting. You guys might not know this, by the way. You can hire people just to cut up your models. These people exist. You can go to the Live2D Discord, and it's typically very reasonably priced, maybe like $50 or so. And these are people who just like cut up the model. I can't speak to their quality. I don't know any specific people to recommend you, but I know they exist. I myself have considered putting my skills up for sale because I am quite good at it. After all, I was able to completely like look at that. Look how good I am. Look how good I am. Gosh, I'm such a good VTuber cutter. So good at slicing up VTubers. Oh, this one too. I mentioned this. So as you remember, the whole it was just called hide the clothes. This whole ponytail piece was one piece. So I made this bottom part its own piece, which sort of overlaps with this, but this one still has extra room so that the pieces can kind of look like they're like rotating around the hair. Yeah. Cutting. I guess you can call them like cutting assistants. Yeah. It's a service. It's that more people should use, quite frankly. I separated the highlight out. There's these separate strands that I separated out. Yeah. So I had to separate the hood back out. In fact, I think the hood didn't even have a back at the beginning. That was rough. But yeah, VTuber cutting is art completely on its, like, okay, there's a few steps to this, right? There's being able to draw a VTuber, being able to just draw in general, the ability to put digital pen to paper. That's one step of it. The next step of it is knowing how to separate things, where there needs to be extra stuff. Like, I mean, obviously, you know, how could you have known that you needed more room here at the bottom? Well, you just sit here and you think about it and you're like, well, maybe I want the rigger to be able to move the hair so that it flows as if, you know, it's the hair is fully rotated. Maybe you didn't have that in mind, so you didn't separate it like that at all. But me, as the rigger, I had that thought in mind, so I decided to cut it up like that. That's the second part of it. The third part, the whole totally separate part, is if you're given a piece of art that needs to be cut up, which means you have to look at the art and sort of extrapolate what it should look like and sort of guess the artist's art style based on the art that's given in front of you. You can look at other pieces of art that they've drawn, which is definitely something that I do. I go through, if I'm given something that's barely cut up, like for instance Ray's was, if I'm given something that's barely cut up, I go back through the artist's art and I look at it and I say, okay, well, when they close the eyes, it looks like this. So, you know, oh, by the way, as a rigger, I would love if more artists give me reference for what the eyes should look like when they're closed. In fact, as an artist, you should draw your eyes closed just to think about what parts you would cut up. So I think that if this artist had drawn the eyes closed, they would have realized that these little pieces need to be separate because they end up on the bottom of the eye. They're not always on the top of the eye. Did they make the heart-shaped eyes separate, or were they provided? For Ray's, they were not provided. For Q's, they were provided. Q's has heart-shaped eyes. Here, they're shown right here. Q has little hearts in her eyes. I don't think, I believe, if I remember correct, yeah, I don't think Ray's did. I believe I did that. That's something I did. Yeah, that's something I did. So where is it? Here it is, the heart pupil. Oh yeah, if you want separate pupils, obviously the pupil before it, like if you want to change the pupils out, then the default pupil obviously needs to be its own layer too. Like I did here with the heart pupils. By the way, if you're curious about the process I went through to rig Ray, or to cut up Ray rather, just cutting it up. So the art was too low resolution for my tastes, so I enlarged it. I went through the entire hair and essentially redrew it. I went through all of the lines and I redrew every single line. It's not obvious because that's how good of a redrawer I am, I guess. You can kind of see it here, how it's a little sharper than everything else and a little darker, maybe. But I completely redrew every single one of these lines. Every single one of these lines I redrew. And I had to guess what was underneath this bang here. It didn't super matter because, you know, you're not going to see most of the time anyway, so I didn't put a ton of effort into it. But, you know, you have to just sort of keep extrapolating what's it going to do, what's it going to look like underneath that bang, how the shadow's going to interact with it, you know, especially when these parts start moving. I also obviously redrew all the stuff underneath this. I redrew all that stuff. I redrew a lot of the hair. I completely redrew the hand from scratch. It looked exactly like this, but it just was too low resolution, and I had to separate all the fingers out anyway, so I'm like, oh, I might as well just redraw the whole thing. Here, I'll show you. So here's the hand that I drew. Here's the hand it was originally. Maybe the colors are a little less vibrant, like on the lines. Like I could have fixed that. I should have fixed that. So, but other than that, it's pretty spot on, I think. Now, of course, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing all my follies. You know? But anyways. Yeah, I think that's everything I want to talk about. And if there are no other questions, we'll just close it out here. Thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry this was so haphazard. I meant to like write out a whole script. Didn't have time to, because my work ran a little late. Rigging, sometimes known as re-arting the model. Yeah, kind of. Depends. So yeah, thank you all for coming. If you ever have any questions about rigging or cutting or drawing, how you should draw it, feel free to @ me on Twitter, or maybe I'll do another stream like this one time. No one ended up submitting any files for me to review, which is totally fine. I mean, I completely understand not wanting to like have someone do that on stream. But if people are interested in me doing that in the future, please feel free to, you know, @ me or DM me on Twitter. If you're interested in reviewing your model, or honestly, if you just, I don't mind doing it off stream either, I think. So if you just want some advice, you can just DM me your model and I'll just give you some notes if you want. So yeah, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for coming. Saturday morning is the kickoff. Saturday morning for me, at least. Saturday, 7 a.m. PST is the kickoff for the VTuber Game Jam, which is going to be stressful. I'll see you all there. Goodbye. Woo!